Hey guys, welcome to the House Project Saturday review. I'm currently at my girlfriend's house in Wales, so as you can see, blessed with this amazing view. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is the kind of like the urban analysis. So for the start of it, for the sort of site analysis, we had to look at the kind of history of it. This is the page I put up on the presentation. I mean, it went quite well, the review for this. We kind of like did a lot of work on, we looked at the forms a lot, we looked at the sort of overall analysis of the history. So we kind of got like different like figure ground maps, so at the 1850s to the 1870s, and then we did the 1960s to the 1970s, and we sort of replicated the two. And we kind of looked at them both and thought, sort of how has the site changed? Like, it's obviously lost a lot of ground in between the two, and at the same time, got some chickens there, you know, deep in their farmland. But yeah, so we basically looked at what's been demolished, what's been retained. We looked at a lot of sort of stuff where basically put the two maps over the top of each other, which is on the sort of the middle of the page there, the big map. And from that we learned like a lot of the places have actually been demolished, and it sort of changed from a manufacturing area to a kind of, I don't know, like more like a commercial area in a way. Slightly, for those who don't know, is the Fabric District in Liverpool. It's kind of like, I think nowadays it's a fairly isolated site, and the majority of people that go there tend to only go there for a specific reason. So say TJ Hughes, that's there. There's also like the market there. I think that's every other day or something like that. So I mean, a fair people still go there, but it's not like, it's sort of slowly dying out from what I think, from what I've seen anyway. There's not, when we did the sort of footfall and the amount of people there, like the amount of people on the outside of the site came to like 1,020, and then the amount of people inside the site came to something like 150. And that was right in the middle of the crossroads of the main point of the site, where you'd get the most interaction in the site. So then this was sort of my page that I did, the Roots and Connections, which should be here. So the Roots and Connections I kind of like doing because I sort of like to see how people journey through a space and sort of how they understand it and how they see it. And so my main thing for this is the vistas, because that influenced our next design stage after, which was we wanted to have the connected vistas on these sketches. So we pretty much got the pie charts in the middle there. They kind of show our statistics of the footfall and the kind of like who goes to the site, what they go there for, the sort of population on the site. So we found out that maybe half the site, well around half the site is all students, and maybe, I think it's about maybe 45 to 40% is middle-aged, and then you've got elderly being the last little segment of it. So that kind of influenced our design in a fair few ways. And who would we be designing it for? What sort of audience are we aiming for? So it was quite interesting to see how the research affects the overall design in a way. And you'll notice this a lot if you go to an architecture school, where you have to do tons of research before you can even sort of start putting pencil to page. Or you can have a sort of overall concept, but then that concept gets influenced by your research, if that makes sense. So then I also started mapping out the vistas. So these sort of the four images on the sort of top corner there are sort of blocked out buildings that I did, because I wanted to show the sort of the massing, but at the same time I wanted to display sort of what people would actually be looking at if the buildings weren't there. So say for this beautiful view, this is the vista right now, and so if we go to the top up there, like the top of the sort of the building, basically is like the driveway, and the driveway sort of leads off into this view, and that's kind of what a vista is. It's like a viewpoint, or like something that people will want to look at. Yeah, so then we sort of looked at the primary, the secondary and the tertiary routes inside the site. We looked at how pedestrians get into the site, we looked at how cyclists get into the site, we looked at kind of like the way the street system works and all that sort of stuff. So we researched tons into these sort of access routes and these kind of like context around the site. So say how far away the site is from Lime Street, how far away from the site is from the Metropolitan Cathedral, and how far away the site is from I think it's the hospital. That's only like 2 minutes away, walking maximum. And then at the bottom we did a thing called serial vision. Serial vision is this thing where you kind of walk around a site, and every say 5 minutes, or like it's either you can do it like 5 minutes if it's a massive site, or you can do it say, I think we did it every minute or something, or every certain amount of steps that we did. And so basically you'd be walking around a site, you'd stop, you'd sketch what you see, and then you'd carry on walking in that direction, sketch what you see, carry on walking, sketch what you see, and you'd have like a certain time limit for sketches. So I think we did it like you've got like 5 minutes to sketch the place, and then you'd walk for like say 25 steps, another 5 minutes sketching, 25 steps, and 25 minutes sketching. And that kind of generates this whole sort of being of a journey, and you kind of understand it a lot more, as in like how people walk through the site, and you get to see like these little frames where because you've drawn it, or if you've taken a photo of it, you pick up on little things a lot more. So here, if we were sketching through this field, we would see the trees more, and we'd pick, say on our sketches, the tree would be the main point of the sketch, because that's what you're looking at in a way. And it's kind of like just building up the sense of journey, and that you want to replicate inside your new design proposal, because obviously you don't want to lose anything from the site, you don't want to take anything away from it, you just want to kind of rebuild it and build on top of what it's already got. It's kind of like looking at things in a new light that people might have been taken for granted in a way, where they've just got used to the journey already and they kind of just walk past it. So then this was our urban form context, where this was the sheet that Molly did for our team project. Just waiting for my phone to load it up because it's only an iPhone 5S. So this kind of urban form context, Molly did like the kind of visualizations of what the site would look like, kind of like looking at where the student, she looked at where the student accommodation is, where the listed buildings are, what the topography is like on the site, what the sort of building facades are like. She did a lot of the sort of visualization stuff, and it worked quite well. Did a really nice mixed media section at the bottom there, which you can see. Like that came out really nice. The print was amazing that she did for it. So you sort of had to put that in the review. That was actually a print, I think, of the student accommodation on the corner. So sort of like as you're coming around the street, it's like basically a really nice listed building, and then it's a massive like multi-story student complex there. So it's kind of a bit of a weird mix between the two, because it's almost like a slither of a building that's listed, and then you have this massive student complex around it. So I don't think too many people were happy with the student complex being there, because it's like an L shape on the site, and so at certain points of day it blocks a lot of sunlight on other areas of the site, and it's quite a high building as well. So there are ways of getting around it, but that was one of the main problems, I think, with our section of the site. God, it's like the chickens know I'm trying to film a video, you know. So then we've got the environmental and social factors. So basically, for this whole brief, we had like 4 points we had to make. So one was the history, one was the roots, one was the sort of topology, and one was the environmental factors. The kind of environmental and social factors were the noise pollution, the environmental state of the site, how we can make it more sustainable, kind of looking at solar power, looking at a lot of things like that really. Like, I think we covered most of it. I think it went really well on the overall presentation. And yeah, that was kind of it, like, for that review. I think from there we did the urban analysis development. So you start off with the overall site, and you do your site analysis, and then you start looking at an individual space inside the site, or like a little quadrant inside the site, and you do another site analysis just for that specific area of the site, and then you kind of look at the development of that site, and then you go really in depth. So you're basically working through the scale. So you've got a 1 to 1000 scale, huge site. Then you've got the 1 to 500 aspect of the site, which is your 1/4 of the site. And then you got your 1 to 100 bit of the site, which is a tiny little bit of your overall development from the second phase, which basically you just design more and you develop it more, and you don't have to run with your team's ideas if you don't want to. But that's the brief we're doing now at the minute. But I'll now talk about the urban design strategy that we did for it, that we proposed for the site. So the first slide that we put up on the wall was the render that I did of the floor plan, in a way, if you can call it a floor plan, but it's more like an urban strategy. So yeah, this took me about 6 hours from start to finish to actually render the model, then like put all the textures on it, put all the materials on it, like do all the Photoshop stuff, and then to add all the little people as well. And then I did the context map at the bottom, just to kind of like, that's one of the most important things in architecture that we're sort of as a collective we're looking at, and it's coming up a lot in like the sort of reviews, where people are like external reviewers will come in and they'll say, like, someone will start talking about their strategy, and then they'll say, wait, where's this context, where's this map that I need to see to locate where this site is in Liverpool? Because that's like, it's almost like one of the worst things that can happen to you at a review, because if you don't have a context map and they don't know where it is, then it can really throw you off with how you kind of carry on with your presentation, because you're not necessarily in that mind space that you need to be to talk about all your ideas. So then, I mean, from there we did the context map, we did a north point, we did I think it was oh, we've got the neighbour's dog barking now, even better, great stuff. And now we've got the chickens going again. So our concept for this programme, or for this sort of site strategy, was we wanted to separate it up into 4 quadrants, and then we wanted to make it as sustainable as possible within 100 years. So for example, the first 2 quarters we'd do the first quarter would be an instant change, where we'd go in, redevelop the site with our new site strategy and change it and make it sustainable, make it self-sufficient in a way, because that's sort of what we wanted to do with the site. We then, for the second phase, we wanted to redevelop that site within 5 years. We turn it into like a sort of solar farm, so because through our site analysis that's where we realised that the majority of the sunlight was going. Phase number 3 that we went with was the commercial area where TJ Hughes is, and we kind of wanted to redevelop that into a commercial residential area within 25 years, or within like 20-25 years. It's like from the 5-year mark to the 20-year mark in a way. And then the top section that we can see, we wanted to redevelop that, and we wanted to make it more like basically from 25 years to 100 years, so it'd take a maximum of 25 years, or a minimum of 25 years to get round to that area of the site, because we need to put in like a massive power plant and stuff there, which is kind of the reasons why it would take so long to build. But in our review, one of our main sort of crits was that it's only 12 years, I believe, that until climate change becomes irreversible. But yeah, so instead of it being called 100 green, it should have been called 12 green, or it should have been called like sustainable site, you know, because 100 green, we got the concept across where we wanted to make the site fully green within 100 years maximum. But yeah, that was one of our biggest critics, is that we should have researched more into climate change, which kind of made me think a lot about the research that I needed to do, and like the stuff I should have understood more before making a gesture or a point towards it, which is another quite big point in architecture school. What do we do then? So then we looked at then we talked about our design process. This was really interesting because we kind of looked at solar power first, obviously the self-sustainable aspect, and from solar power we went through like this motion of like finding out where the most sun is, kind of like talking through it and almost developing these little zones, so where the most sunlight is to where it's most shaded, and we put the market space in where it's most shaded, we put the mediocre sunlight space in the path, and then the most sunlight space would be the green space that we'd get. And this kind of worked out really well. I think they liked the design aspect of that, because obviously it's referencing solar gains, it's referencing green space and how the sunlight has influenced the space in a way. Then it's also referencing like where solar panels are going to go. So obviously on the main back buildings where the warehouses were, we're going to convert them into sort of solar power stations where there's, because it's getting a lot of solar gain, we'd put solar panels on that roof at the back and they'd be hidden away as well. So it's quite a nice aspect to it. And then yeah, I think that's it for that page. So then we went into the so our main three concepts were connected vistas, self-sustainability and journey through the site. And they came out, they liked them three sort of main concept sketches, because from our site analysis that's what we learned, is that we thought the site was isolated from Liverpool because it didn't really have anything that linked it back to Liverpool apart from the Metropolitan Church. So we wanted to kind of open up the site and like reconnect it to landmarks within Liverpool, so that when you're inside the site you can feel and you can look around and think, oh, I know what that building is there because I've been there. And it's like you kind of figure out where you are from based off that one landmark. Sorry about that. So yeah, you kind of figure out where you are from that one landmark, and that was good. They liked that sort of idea, the vista. The chicken, man, just watching me, waiting for food time. So then the second one that we did was the self-sustainability aspect, where we've got the solar panels. So the solar power is coming into the cafe and the food distribution and like the sort of overall food growing space, and then basically that food space comes into the market, and then you've also got solar panels on the other side of the market which funnels into the market to power it. And this like worked out really well for us because I think they liked the journey of the like solar power to food to market to money, and then obviously you go from this market to the isolation space. So the third one was the journey, where we looked at how do people move throughout the site, because obviously we looked at sort of party sketches, we looked at serial vision, we looked at vistas, we looked at all this sort of stuff, and it only felt right to include the journey on the way. So just like basically how they walk through the site, and is there any little intimate spaces that they might miss if they go a certain way, or kind of like a lot of stuff like this. Where we looked a lot into materials for this, because obviously if you're walking through a market and then you change from the market onto like a primary route or a primary path, you want the material to change to make them realise that they're entering into a new space. Or say if you're coming off the market onto a little intimate space, you'd maybe have the market in concrete but you'd have the intimate space in wood. Just kind of give them that change of texture and to make them understand that they're crossing a threshold into another zone in a way. We looked at our precedents, so it was the Peter Zumthor Serpentine Pavilion, the MVRDV Rotterdam Market Hall, the Diligentina self-sustainability site, which is a little village in I think it's Switzerland or Sweden, and then we looked at Jan Gehl's books Life Between Buildings, and they kind of went, I think they liked the Peter Zumthor one because that influenced their isolation spaces and a person wanting to get away from the world and wanting to sit down and sort of just be alone, and they liked that idea because it's like kind of how you enter the site through this different use of materials, through the different journeys. I think they understood that aspect and they liked that. They liked the Rotterdam market, so they give us another great precedent from the Rotterdam Market Hall. They gave us one called Ghent Market, which is basically like an outdoor space where there's a big sort of canopy over the top and it's temporary space underneath. It's all completely open, but like people have markets under there and stuff like that, and I'm not sure whether the storage is above it or I'm not too sure it works. I haven't really looked into it because I'm not doing the market anymore, so I've gone with the isolation space, so I'm looking more into like Peter Zumthor's work at the minute. So then we looked at the actual like Jan Gehl Life Between Buildings. That was a really good book because that like kind of inspired us to look at this journey in a way, and like this change of thresholds and the materials, and it all tied in really well together. So then we went into our visualizations of the site, which went well. Molly's a really good sort of sketch artist, that she did pretty much all these sketches that you can see, and like I think they like looking at them. So basically I like the vegetation sections, the sort of building sections, like what the site would look like after we've changed it. But the biggest crit they said about this work was that Basically when we did the section, to make our main focus point on the changes that we'd made, we didn't infill any of the buildings behind it, and I think that was a really valid point that they made, is in like they said the urban design should sort of incorporate the older stuff as well, to see it in a new light, like I keep saying. But that was one of their biggest points, is that they said, say if you were doing a visualization, why would you leave the other buildings out, as they are part of the site too? The next sheet that we looked at was the diagram sheet, and the diagram sheet was kind of like all the different sort of zones that we looked at within the site, so like primary routes, secondary routes, a lot of the stuff we covered on the site analysis, but we wanted to sort of bring it back for the use of people that hadn't seen our work before, which is it's a thing you should do quite a lot in architecture, especially if you've got a new guest critic or a new reviewer, as in sort of bring in at least a few pages of the work you've done before, and just basically make sure they understand the context of where you've got all this research from, where you've developed your scheme from, and basically stuff like that. So then from there these are all the different, basically the diagrams that we did and stuff like that. There's loads on there. There's like demolition retention, there's the access to the site around Liverpool, how far away it is to walk to certain places, what materials we'll be looking at, basically just documenting the whole bit of the site. And so the important bit for demolition, I'd say maybe there's two really important points on this one, where we've got demolition retention and we've got the materials that we've used. So we've kind of already gone over what materials we'd use there, but yeah, so the demolition and retention, we're looking at demolishing 2 buildings for the market hall, and we're looking at demolishing 2 buildings to make a vista to connect the site back to Liverpool. So then the kind of demolition bit, the biggest crit about that was because we basically said that we want to retain the brick and we want to reuse it in certain parts of the site. So like say we want to build a cafe on top of a roof terrace, then we'd say, we'd use the brick for that, or we'd use the brick for something. So it sort of keeps it all sustainable in a way. And one of our biggest crits with that is we didn't mention, was there a separation between the two? So like say if we've got old brick and new brick, do they just merge together, or are they only used on certain parts of the project? And they kind of, just talking about that for a little bit, like saying, if you're retaining more materials, do they get separated? What happens with them? Are they shaped differently? Are they used in sculptures or something like along them lines? And the last bit that we did for this project was we mentioned our isolation space, which is kind of like where this whole journey ends. So you've come into the site, you've gone through the market, you've looked at the cafe, you've gone through the viewpoints, you've looked at the vistas. And it's kind of like when you just want to get your food and you just want to walk through this series of routes, through these different materials, like realising you're crossing different thresholds, looking at so say if I was walking here now, and I'd put basically grass, well, there is grass there, but I could put a wall here, and I could have a floor plate that's like wood or something like that. But then as soon as that wall opens, I could change it to concrete, and it would make people realise that once they've stepped onto that concrete, from timber, which is a bit more, almost like a rougher texture, and concrete's fairly smooth. So as soon as you step onto that concrete and you look, and you notice the view, then that is because it's the changing materials has done its job in a way. It's just a really interesting use of materials. I think I'm going to continue using that in my architecture that I design. But yeah, so the isolation space. We did this as a key space because it is where the journey ends, and you basically walked all the way through this site, and this is where everything just stops and you can just sit down and relax. It's actually really nice to just go there, sit down, enjoy, and it's surrounded by trees as well. And the sort of green space and where we put this isolation space was designed purely based off the solar strategy that we did for this site. So like if you look at where we've placed all of our things, it's purely based off solar design, and it also acts like as an oasis for students as well. Because say if your students looking out their window and they're looking at like some really rubbish car park, would you rather, fun little thing for you, would you rather be looking out at a derelict building / car park area, or would you rather be looking at something like this, where it's just trees and nature, and you know, you feel like you're away from somewhere when you're up here, like, it's nice. So I can sort of understand the effect that it would have on a student if every day they're looking at like rubbish buildings and stuff, or you can be out here looking at, you know, like just little things like that can help influence their mood and their designs. And we didn't mention that in the review, but we probably should have. Seema also designed the plants that we're going to use in the isolation space, which came out really nice. So we're using like all different ranges of plants, all for different reasons. So like north facing plants, south facing plants, because obviously like some plants can grow in shady conditions whereas other ones can't. So some plants need loads of sunlight, others don't. So we kind of like looked along to that as well. And I think that's it. That was it for that project anyway. Obviously in the review I think we might have talked about the materials a bit more. Hey everyone, so I've just finished editing the video now. It took me a few hours to do today. I try and do it all in one take on a Saturday now. This is my first kind of go at doing a Saturday sort of review report thing, whatever it is. I think maybe like every Saturday if I do a review, like a sort of just like a really thorough review just to go through my work, just to help you guys like sort of understand what I do in uni and sort of stuff like that. It'll kind of help you guys out to decide if you want to go to architecture school and whether you want to become an architect, or you know, just to give you some good examples of what we actually do. I know the video today was quite a long one. It's like, I think it came to about 20 minutes in the end overall, but it was basically just me doing the work that I didn't video, because I know I did 2 videos about a month ago. On the YouTube channel there's that massive gap. Basically this video today that's going up is going to be the gap that fills it in a way, so that's why the video is so long, so I'm apologising for that. I didn't want it to be that long, but it is what it is, you know. I mean, I didn't video it before, so that's kind of what I'm making up for in that sense. But yeah, really enjoyed it today and I love making this content, so I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Adios.